So the theme today is deep listening and return. And it's funny, I forgot to email the script to Andrew on Zoom, so that tells you that sometimes return can be a little bumpy, get a little rusty. And sometimes we come back to something that we haven't seen in a while with new eyes. And that's been a really good gift for me, coming back from sabbatical, to hear all the things that people experienced with Reverend Terry, experienced without a full-time minister here, both for good and for challenge. And I really appreciated the chance to take some time to pause, to reflect, and to also differentiate myself from a system I've been a part of for 14 years. One of the things about doing something that you love is you become very close to it. And I've seen that with parenthood. I've seen that in jobs, friendships, romantic relationships. And one of the healthiest things that we can do is to know who we are, where we end and others begin. And I often talk about our interdependence, the energy of our interconnection, but you also have your own boundaries, your time for rest, your time for renewal. And sometimes I love you all so much that I don't love myself enough, right? And I think we can all say that. Sometimes I love you so much that I answer emails when I should be not answering emails. Sometimes I love you all so much, this sounds like a Dr. Seuss novel, that I will overfunction. I will say, let me do that for you because I care so much. But because I'm going to change for good, I'm going to try and watch that upon my return. And I encourage you to think about this in your own lives. What is it that we do for others that we can share? You know, after all, I don't know if you had mothers that did so long for you that you were flying out of the nest super fast. I ran away from my nest as fast as I could because my mom kept doing everything for me. I needed to learn how to fly my own flight, how to stumble on my feet. And in this congregation, we have so much talent. We have so much love. And I think that it is amazing the things that happen, like Grant was saying. And so I come back to you with new eyes, that there are some things that I will ask for help with. And sometimes I will need to just show up. I'm a staff person. I'm a minister. And sometimes I will need to rest. And I hope you find those yeses and those nos that are powerful. So when I say, hey, so-and-so, I'm not going to call anybody out, and can you serve on this committee? You could say, you know what? I would like to do that. Or you could also say, you know what? I did that for 10 years, and I'm going to take a little break. And that's okay, too. One of the most powerful things to know is that no is just as sacred as yes. And yes can be our biggest affirmation of who we are and what we believe in. And who we are as a community is very important right now. It's very important that we honor ourselves as people. We honor ourselves as an organization that welcomes, that witnesses, that speaks out, that shelters and cares for. So the first part of my sabbatical, I had to unwind. I had to come off of Facebook. We were just talking about in that reading earlier about posting. I am somebody who loves to know what's going on in people's lives. And so to not post on Facebook for 3.5 months was a very good experience. I didn't have to curate my life or to share something to the world for it to be true. I witnessed it, and that was interesting. It was interesting to have that impulse to share, and why? Why am I sharing? Sometimes it's because I just want to share LGBTQ plus woo post, or sometimes it's I want to post about a game I'm playing because I want other people to join me in evil board game playing. Not really evil, but sometimes I need more quiet. We all need more quiet, a little less noise. I know since the election, I have turned off the news. I listen to it for whatever time period that it takes from my car to turn on NPR so I don't have to see faces, and I hear the calm voices of NPR telling me a few things on my way to church and on my way home from church. But that's another boundary that I am more secure in since sabbatical. Somehow I felt like I had to know everything, because somehow if I knew everything, then I would be in control. Well, we know that's not true. We are in control of many things, but we can't control the world around us. We can't make some outcome or make something happen. But what we can do is we can start with ourselves. And we can start with practices that support our mental and spiritual health and that help us to become more of who we are. And that was the part that I really loved about sabbatical, is I found out who I was again. Not that I was totally lost in the woods, but many of us during the pandemic got wound up, got a little more fearful, got a little more isolated, or whatever it was that we wrestle with in the dark hours of the night or in our heads. And I spent some very conscious time working with coaches, doing spiritual reflection, to really seek out, who am I? Who am I now? And I think maybe that's a middle-aged thing too, but I like who I am. I like who we are. I came back and I swear I just wanted to hug about 275 people, and Chris said, you need to pace yourself. So I think on the day I came back, I must have hugged a lot of people. But for me, that's the way to say I love you, is a hug, a touch, a word, eye contact. And that's the caring, right? That's the way to be held in community. And I want that for more people. I want trans kids to know that they can come up here and talk about their transition. I want people to know they can share about endings and beginnings, that we will celebrate those with you. And I want us to think about, who do we want to be in these times to come? How do we want to shine our light out and say what matters? Because the noise is loud. And so what better resistance than to rest, to honor our bodies, to honor our hearts. And then when the time comes that we need to show up, to dance, to march, to sing, to be present, to speak up, to vote, then we have the energy, and we have each other, and we have a community that supports us in that. And that is powerful, very powerful. One of the first things I did was go up to the North Shore, and I spent some time with a very wise minister, and she fed me. Oh, she really fed me. And hospitality is a great spiritual practice. feeding people good food. I drank good wine. I had a place with no noise for 3 days in this just storybook little cabin, and there were blackberries I could pick along the way up the stairs. And it wasn't quite where I could see Lake Superior, but I could hear it occasionally. And in that quiet, I had more room to ask questions. What is it that I want to be doing with my life? What is it that matters? What are the kind of relationships that make me healthy? And then you start with yourself, right? And then it starts going out, like, how do I want to be with my family? What sort of things am I doing in my family that I want to change or keep? And one of the really cool things that I'd encourage you to do if you think about it is I did a timeline. And she said, I want you to spend, she gave me this piece of paper. And I was very intimidated because it was a big piece of paper. But she said, I want you to write a timeline of your life and think about the things that matter. What are the things that stick out for you? And she gave me some questions and some things to think about. And so over those 3 days, I had somebody asking me questions. I was asking myself questions. And we don't always have time. I know I never have time to get away for 3 days usually. But even in our bathroom, shutting the door with our kids knocking on the door, we can take a moment to think, or in the bath, or wherever it is, in the shopping aisle. What is it that's important to me? How can I honor myself and who I want to become? So after that, I began to think about what is it that matters. And it always comes down to love. That's what it comes down to. It comes down to self-love. Because I got so many BS messages as a child, as many of us do, quiet your voice, sit down, girls don't do that, you can only marry a man, that's a man's job, you're not good at math, you're good at writing, all these messages that we hear, or you should put some cream on that. You don't want wrinkles, you don't want gray hair, you want to be thin, you want to be whatever, curvy. I mean, it's always all these messages. Somehow, whatever we are, media or our society says, buy something, do something, be something. Well, you know what? The best resistance is to be your freaking self in a good way. Is to be yourself. And, and to find out what that is, and I don't mean to sound like a self-help commercial today, but I really think we don't talk about it enough. That we don't talk about our own realization about what are our yeses, what are our nos. And if we can help our little people, one of the first times, I remember I used to have a family member that would tickle me. And it would upset me, and I would get mad, and I didn't know what to do with it. And it wasn't any more than that. It was tickling, but I felt like I lost control of my body at that time, and I didn't like it. And I remember I was at my first play group, and Kendra and Aaron were there, and this kid was so cute, and I did what I kind of tickled her. And the mom said, no, you can't do that. You have to ask her permission for that. And I just looked at her and I thought, holy cow, how amazing. I said, absolutely. And I just didn't do anything, but I just thought, wow, nobody ever said that to me, that my body was my body, or that you had to ask permission, or you don't have to kiss uncle whoever or aunt whoever, or get your cheek pinched. Bodies are holy and sacred. We deserve autonomy over our bodies. Women deserve the right to reproductive health care. People should be able to choose their identity, whom they marry, where they live. All of those things are powerful. And so one of the things that I did during my sabbatical was I finished a book. And that was such a joyful thing because I felt like I had spent so much of my life proving to people to take me seriously. I was the youngest child, and often they would pat me on the head and say, "You're cute, you're creative." And so the first job I got out of college that was serious was a stockbroker job because I was proving something to somebody. And I think we carry those childhood worries with us, whether it's the things people tell us that we couldn't do or the things that we shouldn't do or this is who you are. Well, we get to determine who we are and where our paths go. And so to finish a book was something really important to me. And to finish something at all was very important to me. And this was a book about spiritual practices for people living with chronic illness. And I wrote with a Zen priest friend of mine. We had met during the pandemic. During the pandemic, we both found out that we had rheumatoid arthritis. And during that time, I had trouble even using scissors or standing on my feet, or it was a bad illness, and it continues to be a challenging illness. And that's another reason why I think it's become more important to me to honor my body, for us to honor our bodies, is because we can't always do the things that society or that we think we should do. But we can do some things. And so I went out to Tokeland, and it's not like it sounds. It's Tokeland, Washington. It's on the coast. There's an estuary off of Willapa Bay, had birds coming in. And I had crab and pimento cheese. It was so good. And the quiet there, and the protection there, and the cradling of that spirit of creativity was powerful. And I know some of you have places like that here in Eau Claire. I hear you talk about, I go for a walk, in Owen Park and by the river, or I go to Lake Superior and I get renewed by its shores. And so many places that are sacred and that can hold us. And so in our time of renewal, I hope we can be creative. I hope we can take a chance to be ourselves, to think of creative ways to respond to the challenges ahead. To know that this is a place of harbor, of sanctuary, a place where we can take risk and say things up here and be who we are. And that love really is the spirit of this church. It's not just something we say each Sunday, but it's an action that we give ourselves and to each other and to our neighbors, even when they're different signs on their lawn, even when we're frustrated and don't understand what the choices people make. Because it's love that builds us up, and it's love that carries us forward. And one of the greatest teachers is ourselves. It's our body. It's how we feel. And getting in touch with that and taking care of ourselves means we can take care of each other. And then we can take care of the world, and we can make a change. So I'm going to listen, and I hope you listen to each other too, and listen to your bodies and your hearts. And we're going to be okay as okay can be. And when we're not okay, we're going to be there for each other. Amen.